medical in prison is, the medical system is like running through a gauntlet. CMS services, I'm familiar with them. They were at my prison. It's called Central, I think Central Medical Services or something like that. You need more light? Okay. Is that enough? Okay. It's basically, in a lot of senses, next to nothing. So, case, for example, I was playing basketball, and one day I blew my meniscus out, but I didn't know what was wrong, and I went to medical, and they told me, oh, it's a sprain. It's nothing. I was like, I don't think it's a sprain, man. This thing's not working right. So they gave me a direct order. I need to go back to my cell. If I have another issue, fill out another medical service request. So keep in mind, a medical service request is called an MSR. You have to fill out, put your name in, your cell number, and briefly write what the issue is, and it takes about a week for it to get through. So this particular time, I waited 2 weeks to get my knee looked at, and after the second time, and they said they ordered an MRI, I actually saw a van come in, or a tractor trailer come in the back of the prison, because I was out sitting on the yard, and I knew it was the bus to do the scans, and it came in, sat for 5 minutes, and then left. And I was supposed to go to medical that day, but I never got a pass, and I went up there, and they said I had canceled it. I had canceled going to medical. I did the best I could to rehab my knee, but come to find out I had a torn meniscus that I was trying to rehabilitate and play basketball on for at least another 10 years. Let's see here. If you have a toothache, it's going to take you about 2 to 3 weeks to get in there to see the dentist. It's just not good. It's not good. They use generic medication. The doctors that they use, they try to get them from countries that like Mexico or places they don't have a higher standard. It's just all around it's not a good experience. It's at all.
That's wild.
Yeah.
They're getting medications from other places.
Yeah, it's generic brand. Like the names of it, you look it up, you can't even find it in a medicine book to try to see what it is, what are the side effects, all that. Like these off-brand names. That's aspirin. Like it doesn't say aspirin. It says codeine or some type of weird name. It's bad. It's not good. They also are incentivized to save as much money as they can to not do these procedures because people get bonuses at the end of the year about how much money they saved. They're incentivized to save money and not provide adequate care. And then they say, all these guys are malingering, they got all this stuff going on. And another aspect of it, I worked in hospice for every bit of 5 years. And like just the way that they treat people, it's bad. Like none of the nurses bathe people. They depend on inmates to bathe people, and inmates like me at the time, like I would go and say something to them, hey, this guy's got the wrong medication. You guys gave this guy the wrong medication. Something has to change here. What's going on? Like this guy needs a bath. We need to do something. This guy's in excessive pain, or whatever the issue is, because they would sit in their office and talk on the phone or play something on the computer. They wouldn't be present with the guys. It's bad.
So they just like don't care?
No, they don't. They don't care because inmates are labeled as subhuman. Yeah. When you label someone as subhuman, you have a tendency not to really care and put out all the effort that's necessary for a person, And like we kind of do it. If you think about, let's say a lizard or a snake. That's a perfect example because that's part of their core training. They hold up a picture of flowers and everything nice when it comes to society, and then for inmates, they hold up a picture of snakes in their core training. You're not going to give something that you view a snake as a snake all the care that it should have just by training. Like they have a whole culture and a mentality about that. And then these people are coming from these areas where they feel like, this is the only opportunity that they have, and then they get an opportunity to treat someone less than what they should be, and they add to themselves. They're utilizing what's called the addition by subtraction theory. I talk about you and label you as less than valuable to make myself feel better.
Okay, time out for a sec. So there are a couple things here. You've been asking about medical because remember you're doing your project. I'm telling it to you guys. She's doing a project on medical. But commissary, you were asking about the commissary and just the idea, you've been painting a picture of everything takes a little while. You have to fill out a form. You have to wait two hours for your whatever that you're ordering, and then the medical and right.
Except when you owe them money, they immediately take it if you owe them money.
Right?
Yes.
So it's all adding up to the business to proof of if you needed examples of this is being run like a business, and then to that conversation of privatization, right? To the second thing where you were saying about the snakes, when people are trained or when people are, if this is the conditioning and this is the structural training where the inmates are less than human, and then this is the way that you handle this, and this is the training, and all that attitude that. Where they don't care, this is just a job, they're just clocking in, that structural, you'd have to look at, if you were looking at police brutality, like when George Floyd had, when he was killed and everybody saw it, but they were shocked. Michaela, just come and just step around the camera. It's not the actions of the one police person per se, you also want to be looking at that training, that Jonathan, the structural training, because
oh yes,
because they're being taught to look at the inmates as less than human, or to deal with them in a certain way. Like if you want, like it would be just like how you train an animal or how you deal with an animal. If you think an animal is dangerous, they're taught how to respond in a certain way. So you would chase, if you were interested in that, you would chase
core training,
the way that they're training.
Yes.
If you were interested in the thing about the generic medication or where the cheapest medication, the medications that wouldn't pass FDA or whatever, you would trace the money, or you'd trace where do they source their medications from? Who's the benefit, like who's the provider that's getting that, right? So that's what you would have to chase, and then you would use this lived testimony to back that up. That's how you're putting the theory and the... Also, canteen prices and the items. If you want to know who's really invested in prisons, that's a huge resource. Find out who's investing in it. You track the lineup, but who's supplying the canteen items. There may be multiple entities, and who's involved there, and how are they funding that vehicle, and who's benefiting from it. That may be difficult to find because they try to use multiple different places to shelter and hide eyesight and oversight. Yeah. And always that question, our driving question is always in whose interest. Mm-hmm. Whenever you want to find something, in whose interest, you always find out who's the person that benefits the most. Correct.
What about the story of the guy waiting in line to get their pills?
Oh, I think did I tell y'all that? Yeah, I told him about that. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So the reason why that is, it's like their quickest answer is like, you know what? I really don't have to put in a whole lot of effort. Let me give you this pill, and let me get this money for it, and then you're solved. You're in your cell because you're nodded out, and you're high,
right? And
you don't care about what's going on. You're blind to it, and I fix the problem. I go on to the next one, and that's the quick answer. Just like with these kids, like growing up, like they had a thing where they were giving kids Ritalin like that, like OxyContin, like all these pharmaceutical companies giving out OxyContin like soda pads. I got a guy who working for me right now. He tore his knee and messed his knee up, and they were giving him OxyContin in high school, and then they were giving him refills on his own without his parents' presence, and the dad finally had to call and say, "Hey, look, I know what's going on. Let me talk to the supervisor." Like, oh, they try to play him crazy. Like, oh, we don't know what you're talking about. He said, look, if you don't get your supervisor on the phone with me right now, because I'm trying to stop this, I will take what I know to the authorities. And believe me, you don't want to know that because I know what you're doing. You guys, case in point, you guys are selling to a minor. And she said, okay, hold on. She got the dude on the phone, and they immediately killed it. At that point, the damage is already done. He's addicted to narcotics.
Probably on the street to try and find it in a different way.
Yeah, the guy didn't even grow up like he grew up in a wealthy household. He went from living in a wealthy household to shooting drugs up, sleeping in abandoned houses and trap houses, just like that. Yeah.
I mean, in the hospitals, like, you know how we hear that it's like $8 for an aspirin or things like that, because the hospitals can drive up the prices
Yeah.
unless you have a lawyer that's going to be, you know, negotiating down the price
Yeah.
of whatever it is. Even though in hospitals, they probably would use the FDA approved things, and whereas in the prisons,
Yeah.
because the general thinking is it doesn't matter,
Yeah.
then they could, the type of product they could, but they're still driving up the prices because of that. It's a racket.
We don't even know what the prices of some of these items are. That for an inmate, again, remember I told you guys about the fishbowl theory of information? Like they shield that information from us. We can't go to the library and get that information. We don't have access to the internet. You just can't do stuff like that. So everybody that's in prison, like the information they get is the information that they allow into them, or maybe someone in society that they call, which they still can cut it off on you, act like the phone's cut off, because it's happened before. Like you call, like, hey, can you tell me what this medicine is and how much it costs? And they Google it and look it up. And then the price comes, click up, and hangs up on the phone. Like, what's going on? That's the only way you'll be able to find out outside information is by outside contact, which I was fortunate enough to have. You know. Yeah, that's what, with the stuff that y'all doing with the prisoners and all that, it's extremely important for you to go and talk to them and provide information, and just it's information and knowledge that's so key in a situation like that.
What we have run into, so I don't know that you all know exactly what the museum has been doing with the incarcerated artists program. We were working with Oglethorpe works with Walker Prison, right? And some of you may know, some of you don't. But it's tough because you can't necessarily have students going into the prisons.
Yeah.
And so even when we were trying to get that money, that funding for the teacher of the teacher the artist that's in residence here, that's teaching our students already how to do art or how to do a certain kind of thing. But then to include the inmates in Walker Prison, we had to get these extra like technology so that she'd be able to teach, because she won't be allowed in the prison, or right. So we're navigating all kinds of paperwork for like how we can actually be having this contact.
Yeah.
With the prisoners, and we want that, but we have to navigate all kinds of permissions or all kinds of waivers, and like, well, how is it going to go down, and then how do we explain it to? But yeah, no, I agree with you. It's needed.
That's by design. They put you through a gauntlet of questions and policies and procedures to one, discourage you, and also muck up the water for liability concerns. But
yeah, just think about. I mean, I don't know. I might be fired at the end of this job, but just think about, you know, you're out, right? But okay, somebody that's in, and us having contact from the outside, and how that could be viewed as obviously beneficial for inmates and for civic population getting closer to the real story. And seeing somebody as human, but then what would that be like? That would be dangerous, considered dangerous for who's running this show.
Yeah, I don't think there is a desire to outright say it, but there appears to be a special interest to limit an inmate's ability to contact the outside and to be viewed as more than what they're currently labeled as. There is a resistance. And I say that because I can just outright say it. I am a consultant and an advisor also for the Missouri Department of Corrections, like the directors and all that. Like I'm in constant conversation with them. Matter of fact, I plan on going back here pretty soon to go back to the prison where we're at, and we're basically working together to reform the culture there. You know, Father, remember I told you guys about the Norwegian prison project? Did you guys do any research on that? Powerful. It's like all of the harshness and all, it doesn't work, and it's been proven. And these people realize it because they tried to legislate. People don't get high. We'll give you an astronomical amount of sanctions and send you to hell. Well, guess what? They had 200 dirty urines and ODs. You can't legislate that. You can't. Only thing you do is change the environment and to try to help these guys be seen as more human and more helpful. Some of these staff members, they're saying like, yeah, there is resistance. Matter of fact, I tell, the warden was saying like, hey, I told some of these staff members, if you're not gonna be on board with this, don't even come talk to me, because we're trying to do things different now. And I'm shocked, I'm blown away at the language that they're using. Like just basically treating inmates as humans. Like that, to hear them say that after 23 years of being seen as less than human is such a powerful feeling. And like I'm in contact with a bunch of prisoners right now. Like I have them on my phone. They can call me. I can go up there and go visit them and go talk to them. And they're telling me like, yeah, the culture is really changing. So I hear it at the top level, and I'm seeing it at the ground level where all the policies and rules are supposed to impact the most. Like it's really changing.
Is that because people are trying to take rehabilitation policies more seriously?
Yes. Yes, because it's costing them more money. The prison that I was at, JCCC, the one where I'm,
bottom line,
it is the bottom line. It's you can always follow the money, and they can tell you what's going on, what the plot is. The money will tell you everything if you follow it. Always remember that. Follow the money. Who's getting paid? Who's benefiting from it? Who's the benefactor? But they're so serious about changing what's going on, because like they murdered a guy recently at the prison that I was at. Like they went into ADSEG, they was beating the guy up. Y'all know, y'all saw the footage of the guy getting kicked on and beat on in New York, right? Like that, I saw that happen while I was there, and they covered it up. Guy filed a lawsuit. It was on camera. Guess what happens when we come to court and the guy asks for camera footage? Oh, it came up missing. We can't find it. That whole section happened to come up missing. They protected it and they scrubbed it. But this time, like people start blowing the whistle, and they had other officers saying like, yeah, they went too far. And 4 officers got indicted. So now they're on a public relations scramble. Like, we got to do something different. We got to do something different. So now they're really trying to change things, and they're actually bringing in staff that have the mindset to try to change things. That's what makes the difference. The staff and the administration, if they're willing to change and do things, then you can have an impact on it. And then you may be able to find a little information. But I guarantee you, some of these prisons and organizations that don't have like-minded people, that have the mindset to treat inmates as less than valuable, you're not gonna get much information from them. You're not gonna get into access, you're not.
So when is it that it's true reform, or when is it that we're reacting to some kind of PR thing, so we're massaging this like for the public consumption, like?
This is how you know the difference. And I've seen it. So it's just for the public forum. It'll come in, last for a season, and then fade out. But lasting change is when they come in and they change the training, and then subsequently change the culture. Like right now, we are aiming at changing the culture at the prison that I was at, and the whole Missouri Department of Corrections. And they're doing it by the people that they're hiring. They're bringing new staffs. This is what they used to do. They used to bring new staff in and take them straight to ADSEG, where all the worst of the worst were inside. So their first introduction to a prisoner is, ah, excuse my language, fuck you, bitch, suck my dick, rah, 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 rah. Doosh, doosh, doosh. Hearing hollering and raping and all that. Like people pulling their penises out on female staff as they come in. Like that's what they're introduced to. So when they see that, they think, oh, everybody has the potential to be like that if they go to ADSEG. So now what they're doing is they're flipping it on their head. Before they ever take it to ADSEG, they bring them to this organization called Global Leadership Academy. They bring them in and they show these inmates that have been down for a while, that have been through the gauntlet and have seen like the horrors of bad culture. And they're saying like, hey, like you guys can do something different. You guys can be a part of something great. Like we are humans too. Please see us as that. And they sit down and they see them like, oh, that's the finished product. We're trying to get here. We're not trying to stay over here. Oh, I can get down with that. Because prisons has a way of demoralizing and degrading an individual's mindset. Shakespeare said, I think he said, if you want to see the worst that society has to offer, I'm paraphrasing. If you want to see the worst that society has to offer, go to prison and shift change. And that's not because they're just generally bad people. The prison environment, the way it currently exists, pulls that out of you. And it makes you, anytime you're in a position to devalue life and devalue another person, like you lose a bit of yourself. Like it just happens like that. And I saw, being there 20 years, I saw guards come in that were good and peaceful. 10 years later, they're like popping people like popcorn, thrashing and bashing, tearing up cells. And if my language and my terminologies are difficult to understand, please tell me if you got any questions.
Okay, that's a lot. So
I know.
The rhetoric of the criminality, like what is a criminal and what a society will buy into is a criminal, we saw that when we were watching 13.
Yeah.
Right? And when we were talking, Carla, when you brought up the El Salvador guy that does the prisons, right? The mass prison thing, for that context, if somebody's thinking, if a society has been terrorized by drug gangs, etc., cartels, and so on, and they're thinking that's all a criminal is, then they'll be happy to. The mindset will be that they'll be happy to view them as less than human, or as they're wreaking havoc, they're doing, they're not good for society and they should be put away, right?
Yeah. They do that by controlling the narrative. They use fear mongering. Anytime they talk about in America, what's one thing you hear legislators like? Tough on crime, tough on these criminals. El Salvador, they talk about all these people are gangbangers and blah, 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 and they did all this and that and the third, blah, blah, blah. They snatching people that ain't even in gangs. They snatching people.
Yeah, well,
it's documented.
That Venezuelan thing was like, we don't even know if that they were in the gangs or it's not been confirmed. Right?
So the only way to combat that is put out a different narrative. That's not like, hey, these people are more than just gangbangers. Let's get into why did they get into the gang in the first place? Let's humanize these individuals. That's how they're dehumanizing them. That's how they're justifying what they're doing by calling them all these heinous things, putting up their crimes. And they may not even be convicted of it, but if they see one person that's in that prison that's guilty of a heinous act, everybody else is in there. Guess what? Everybody automatically thinks, because they're not doing their homework, and they probably can't because of information control, they think everybody's in there is on the same thing, and they're all justified in being there. That's how you convict the whole town, and make everybody feel like, man, everybody's in there is guilty of it, and they need it. That's how you do it. Control the information.
Even the way that they were shaving everybody's heads, putting them all in that white.
They're gonna walk like this.
Right, and walking like that, but everybody's looking the
Yeah.
same, and you can
Yeah.
see how that process of breaking them down and dehumanizing them, just having people see them as, right?
Yeah, oh, good.
No, fine.
No, yeah, I'm just thinking there's, like you were saying, there's that one approach where you show them all the good up front after, well, not up front, but after having, been through prison for a while. And that is impactful, but I'm wondering what the effectiveness is compared to that super harshness. Do you know of anything? Because I was saying the other day, they did, for a period of time, if you were over 13 and had a tattoo, they automatically took you in.
Yeah.
So everybody that has a tattoo over 13, that's crazy.
Mhm.
So obviously they were found to be innocent people. But even I think about Dubai too, or the United Arab Emirates. I can't. Yeah. But how strict they are on crime, but it's you can leave a $5,000 bag, nobody's gonna take it because they just know. So it is effective. It's not. I'm not saying it's right, but just the effectiveness. I wonder if there's a certain protocol on the other side that would be that effective.
To on the other side of prison?
To deter crime, going to prison. I mean.
Well, yes, there is a way. We have seen it. There's so many different vehicles and opportunity out there. One thing you have to do is create a community that is full of opportunities. There is equality. There's equality, and like there's an investment in the community. Most of the people that have gang tattoos and all that they get that from their environment that they're in, and those environments are created. You ever notice how in the hood, anybody been around the hood, around here in the trap, close to it? Anybody? What you see on every corner? Liquor store, fried chicken joint, gas stations. How many pawn shops, places where you to spend your money? How many warehouses do you see in there? How many Tesla facilities do you see in these communities? Let's just look at the landscaping. How does the landscaping look? The city ain't even investing in these communities. That's how you create that. And then there's studies that show like beautiful landscaping alone lowers your blood pressure. When you're constantly in a stressed out, depressed state, and you're frustrated about your circumstances, and you got this bill coming up next week, and so-and-so needs a surgery, and you got 4 tires that need to be replaced on your vehicle, and you might need a transmission. And then your son needs, they have the ability to be an athlete and go to school and do all that and do all these great things, but they can't because the car's broke down. What do you think gonna happen? You go to school, you get secondhand books. What do you think is gonna happen? And then you go to school, you don't learn nothing about your culture and your people. What do you think happens?
Yeah, it's a full multi-pronged thing. Like,
Yeah, it's a system.
Your point about in the Emirates, you would have to look at the environment. You'd have to look at what is provided and access. Does everybody have access?
Everybody has a job.
And like even thinking about it like that, like they have slums in Dubai too. It's just not shown like that. So I'm wondering if because a lot of people have tested it, like leaving things out in the streets just to like see like, will somebody take it and they don't. But I'm wondering if they went across the way and they went to the little
the slums,
towns, the little towns outside that are like not at all the same as what the architecture is like over there. Like, would that be the same case? Like, is that still an effective form of?
Right, and who's doing the controlling of the narrative? Who's reporting that, right? So, you guys will always have to look at where you're getting a story from, in who's. Just ask that first question should be your guiding question should be in whose interest. But we said we would look at what is the point of prison, like what are prisons for, right? Or what's the point of having prisons? There has to be some benefit or some common good, right? There are, you said on Monday, there are people who they don't want to change, even if they might get to a point where but there are some that are not interested. They want to have a certain, they're fixed enough, right? What do you do for those kinds of humans in society, right? Maybe prison has what's prison for?
Prison is a place in its nature, is a place to control people who are not in control of themselves, and they don't respect the rights of others, and they do the forbidden. They try to hide it. That's what prison is generally for. But if you put into the business aspect, it's a revenue generator, and it's a way to siphon off taxpayer dollars and put them in other people's pockets. Like, we spend way too much money on prisons rather than education. That should be our highest priority, but prisons seem to be more. Like, I challenge you guys to do a study on that. How much money are we spending on prisons compared to how much money we're spending on education? And try to do it demographically. Like, pay attention to the areas, like they're spending the most money on prisons, and how much city money and taxpayer dollars is being put into these communities. And you can visually see how much money is being put into the communities by looking at the landscaping, looking at the schools, looking at the quality of the books. But it just requires a little footwork to be able to do that.
I think one thing I was thinking about from Monday, especially after we were talking about like Ricardo's point, and like the idea of like prison being used as I guess, like an avenue to like warehouse people.
Yes.
And, like,
For profit.
Yeah, for warehouse human beings for profit. And I was thinking about like the other ways that happens. And I know like, for example, like again, like my project deals with like mental health and like neurodivergence and stuff. And I found that on average, specifically with people of color, especially African Americans, are more likely to be diagnosed with like an Axis 3 mental health issue and higher, which is, and that goes from, so like Axis 1 is like depression, anxiety, Axis 3 is like schizophrenia, oppositional behavioral disorder, basically like the aggressive ones that need to be more like closely monitored and like heavily medicated.
Yes.
And those are the medications that are actually like more brain altering.
Yes.
And the fact that like you can go in to be treated for like an anxiety disorder, which is very common in Black communities, especially with like, you know, generational trauma.
Yeah.
And like the things that happen are like literally we were just talking about like a lot of times like closed Black communities have all these issues with like dealing with like lack of resources, everything. Like the common Black family just has a lot of anxiety. To that have then go into being changed into being introduced like all these medications that like the brain isn't really meant to handle, especially like unregulated. I don't know, I feel like that goes into how another way to like almost use like a soft power approach to use a financial institution like the pharmaceutical industry to then close people off and keep them from certain opportunities.
And do experiments.
Yeah.
They experiment on inmates. I guarantee you that's what they're doing. On inmates. They're doing it legally. They're coming up with all these psychotropic medications and they're putting it in there. You know, I don't want this out there because some pharmaceutical companies will kill you. There ain't no secret about that. But they will come up with all these different pills, and before you know it, you ain't gonna, like remember I was telling you about, you don't know what the name of it is? They'll throw a name on it, you don't know nothing about it, you can't do no research on it, and they'll experiment it. They did it to Tuskegee. They did experiments. They do it to lab rats. They do it to other individuals. They even pay individuals to do experiments. Prison is a place where you can do experiments and do it through sanction and not have to worry about oversight because it's such of a closed network and closed off and away from society due to legislative veils. Yeah. Yeah. Any other questions anybody got?
My dad was incarcerated for 5 years.
Uh-huh.
In those 5 years, he was probably transferred to 6 or 7 different facilities.
Uh-huh.
Do you think your experience would have been, or how different do you think your experience would have been if you were transferred from place to place?
I think it would have been very different. Because when they transfer you around like that, they're intentionally trying to make you feel disoriented because you got to come in, you got to learn a whole new set of friends, you got to laminate a whole new set of dangers, you got a whole new set of staff that you have to learn, and then once you get your feet up under it, it takes about 3 to 5 years to actually get used to a place, and have staff get used to you to the point where they're not harassing you, and you've basically gone to the gauntlet of guys that you need to fight. Because you do have to fight when you go to prison. That's just the reality of it. I feel like your dad. Why would you say that is your dad? How is your dad doing now?
I thought prison would make him like so drastically different, but he still seems to be my dad. But like now that I'm older, I don't know, I feel like he's less optimistic. Like I think it broke him down a little bit. Like there was a situation in one of the facilities, like there was a gang fight or something, and they accused him of being involved. They put him in solitary for weeks, and
Yeah.
they was like, we're gonna extend your sentence 3 years, and the cameras were broken, and he was just like, I give up. Like, there's nothing for me. I can't fight this.
So there was a point when I was in prison when I just did a year of solitary confinement for something I didn't do. Again, I'm in prison for something I didn't do, and in the whole inside prison for something I didn't do. And she was coming up to visit me, and I got locked up because my neighbor got caught with some drugs. Not me, not my cellie. It wasn't even my cell. It was my neighbor. And they locked me up because they didn't like me. But they locked me up and put me under investigation. And, I basically snapped out. I'm 250 pounds, solid muscle. You know, I was so big at the time, they had to double cuff me. And they put me in this holding tank. They like, Jonathan, you about to go to hold on investigation for selling drugs. I'm like, what? I ain't sold no drugs. What are y'all talking about? Like, well, that's what you go in the hole for? I'm like, and I thought they were joking. I was scheduled to go to general population the next day. And she was coming to see me, and I don't like, you know, I really dreaded visiting people behind the glass. So I was thankful to see that. And they just kept going on, and finally something snapped in me. I was like, you know what? Y'all gonna frame me? I'm tired of being framed. Come get these cuffs. Matter of fact, I actually slipped my hand out of one, and they had like 10 COs outside my cage, but they wasn't open because they saw how mad I was. I was kicking the cage. Boom, boom, boom. Come on, go get it. I'm gonna make you earn this one. Come on. And a lady came in. Her name was Jody. She said, Jonathan, man, it's real. They think you might have done it. Like, calm down. Like, I believe you. I know this isn't you. Just give up the cuffs. Just go to the hole. We'll figure it out. So after about 5 minutes, I calmed down. I'm thankful that they didn't rush in that cell on me, because they'd have hurt me or I'd have hurt some of them. Because I couldn't think straight. I wasn't hearing nobody. That's all. I was just so enraged. They took me to my cell, and I had reached my breaking point. I looked around my cell, and I was like, man, I'm done. I can't do anymore. And I took my sheet apart, strand by strand, and I made ropes. And I roped them together, and then I made a noose, hung it up on the sprinkler. And I was getting ready to do it, put it over my neck. I was hyperventilating, you know, and I believe God saved me. I fell out, boom. Woke up the next morning, I had clarity of thought, and I was like, man, what was I doing? I looked at the thing, I was like, what was I doing? I was like, man, that's crazy. And I had a game plan. I went on a hunger strike, you know, but I was fasting. They called it a hunger strike. I just wanted to pray and like, God help me. This is crazy, what they got going on. But had I not passed out, I'd have hung myself. Like, man, prison, man, that's what's so dehumanizing about it, because it takes from you. I would say it would even steals energy from your soul. It robs you of your humanity, because it's an environment. Like, it's true that you can be a product of your environment if you're unaware of what's going on. Like, and that environment took so much from me. And for him to go to prison like that and be bounced around, he never felt stability. He was always in fight or flight mode. And that's hell on your adrenal glands. Like, of course he's depressed and he's angry. Like, yeah, he loves you and everything, but he's like, man, then he get out, I can't get a job. I can't make money. I can't really take care of my family. People look at me as less than because I committed a crime and I served my time. Like, he's got a lot going on. He does. And it is my hope, and I don't know the dynamic of what y'all got going on, but it is my hope, based on my experience of what it takes, is that you treat him like a human being, and that you love him and you bring joy to his situation. Every time you come up, smile, you know, have him go do something, you know what I'm saying? Just do nice stuff for him and just spend a little time with him, because he's missing a piece of himself that was robbed from him. I promise you that. That made me think about my whole, man. Y'all ain't supposed to be having me up here tearing up, man. All right.
Think about it, that thesis or the premise, when you were doing the interview with Lecrae.
Yeah.
And that argument about mass incarceration is basically a neo-slavery, like it's a new, you know, it's the modified. It's the
legalized slavery, yes.
Right? And just the way, so I noticed in that interview, and I remember when we were first having lunch to discuss like how this could happen, there was a part in the interview where Maya was talking and I mean, the camera is looking at both of you, so even though Maya was doing the answering at the time, it seemed to me, and I asked you about it, I'm just saying it, repeating it for everybody here, it seemed to me that you were having some kind of flashback or some kind of, the conversation was making you think about something. Like, just, you had gone from being very present in the interview to you'd gone for a minute.
Yeah.
Or like you're answering a question, from Layla's telling you about her experience with her dad, and then you answer it, and then it takes you to that spot. So in that sense, I'm thinking, when we're studying all the Toni Morrisons of the world, and everybody that's talking about like the effects on the traumatic effects on communities that are descended from this history of slavery, right? You can't kind of get away from it. You can move forward or move through or whatever kind of thing, but you can't kind of get away from. Yeah, you can't. Like, it just happened to you.
Yeah, it did.
You don't know how it's going to happen to your dad, or these. So in that sense, it would be a compelling argument to say that it has the same effect in terms of keeping a community or a set of people or groups that are marginalized or on the periphery down. Because of all these other angles, like you can't, even when you get out, you can't quite. You're still in survival for the society.
Yeah, I promise you, he's still in survival mode right now. Has he been to counseling?
He's against it, and I tell him like that's what you want to do.
Well,
So he'll talk to us, but like we don't fully understand it either.
No. So, and actually, all y'all gonna need to go to counseling.
That's one of the things that that was in the proposal with the Walker prison thing, was that one of the ways that we, as us in the civic, our civic role could be when we're engaging with an incarcerated population, that we wanted to like have the stories of their family members and things, right? So in the case of somebody who, it's not just the person who's incarcerated, but it's the family members that are in their community, to get their testimonies, but also that everybody would be going to some kind of counseling, because you'd have to get professional help to be able to help or understand, because you haven't been there, you're not in the experience.
No frame of reference.
But you are his loved one, right? So how would you learn to help him, and how would he learn to deal with, even though he loves you, et cetera, et cetera. So that, I think that's an important thing. So like the rehabilitation is really not even just for the incarcerated; it's for everybody that's around, and then for the community at large and society at large, even people who are not directly involved with your family,
and
like what,
and like you can't tell me you ain't got trauma for him going to prison. Like you need it too. Like all his loved ones that love him, like they suffered. Y'all suffer from that. Like you having birthdays and you can't do nothing for him, or you just got a bad day and you just want to hug your daddy, curl up in his lap, and you, even though you're grown, you still want to be able to do that. And like you can't. It's you've been robbed from that opportunity. And like he committed a crime. That's true. But the way the law is written, you serve your time, but there also needs to be a restorative aspect of it. We're so heavy on the punitive aspect in the United States that we're completely forgetting the restorative aspect of it. Once we pull a person out of society that is clearly offline and malfunctioning, in terms of society, we're immersing them in some type of punishment in a whole new foreign world, and then we're gonna let him out in society and think they're gonna do well. That's like taking an old car with bad belts. You got bad brakes. You got bad everything in this thing. You put it in the garage for 10 years, and you think you're gonna let it out and drive. How many people would risk driving that car? You won't do it to a car, but you'll do it to a person. Something is wrong. We have to be restorative minded. We can't just be punitive minded, because what we're doing is we're actually in turn harming society. That's the reason why the recidivism rate is so high. And I would venture to say this: I believe that the recidivism rate is high almost intentionally. There's some intentionality behind it. Because again, I say you can put a monkey on the moon, but you can't stop a person from reoffending. When if you look at it, these people can't get jobs, they don't get counseling, and then we don't even talk about the prison environment. It has not been studied, it has not been changed, but we see the prison methods that they're using has been proven around the world to not be effective. That's why Norway has done something different. And there's too much information behind it. They did everything that we're doing right now. Everything El Salvador is doing, like, it's been done. It does not work.
But if the rhetoric is that that criminals are less than human and need to be ridding society for the greater good, like it's vermin and et cetera, then it's never going to be a restorative.
No.
Like that would have to change the whole culture thing for it to be.
Yes.
Saying that is actually to everyone's benefit.
Correct.
But it's not. That's why the in whose interest question is so powerful, because in whose interest is it to keep people warehoused, to keep them from functioning in society, from accessing other things that some groups have in society? It has to be to somebody's benefit. It's not to the group that's incarcerated.
Yeah.
It's not to, right? So,
It's a very small group of people, very limited
Right.
amount of people benefit.
Yeah.
It's a financial benefit,
Yeah.
but a
Yeah.
human benefit.
Mhm.
You're becoming a worse human.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right?
and not just financial. It's also in the social order. It's like who, right?
Socioeconomically
Mhm.
benefit,
Mm-hmm.
which is not what makes us human beings.
Yeah.
Right.
So they need, the trauma is impacting them as well. You're dehumanizing yourself by making yourself the few as well. So no one's winning, actually.
Yeah. Staff members feel guilty. They go through a guilty phase where they just feel guilty about the way they treat people. And I know this because I've had a number of them just come up to me and tell me, it's like, man, I hate the way that officer treated so-and-so, or I didn't like what they did to you. It's like, I don't like how they're trying to make me do this. Like, look, man, don't make me do my job. Please just go to your cell, because I have to do all these things. Or, like, it has an impact on staff members, the way the system's set up, on COs. There is an
I'm sure
impact.
you
There's a
could
cost.
I'm sure you could look at turnover,
Yeah.
right?
It's very
Turnover
high.
has to be an indicator of, like, they just can't do it anymore because they know what they're doing, right? It's taking a toll.
Yeah.
Mariah, remember I sent you a. Well, no, this is just related to her project. So there's a thinker, long dead. Mariah's working on a project of like white guilt and investigating like a book that Patricia Hill Collins.
Hey,
did,
now.
which is- right, and I was like, well, I didn't put him on the syllabus, but I have done before, and I do it in other classes. But this black, he was from Martinique. This black thinker, he was a psychiatrist in a time where there weren't a lot of black psychiatrists.
Yeah.
He came up with he was doing it from a psychological term that that the guilt in colonialism, like the colonizers as well as the colonized, are feeling the thing, but the guilt comes through it's a psychoanalytic projection response, is the way that he put it, right? And so people who double down on these are criminals, or that person's less than, these people deserve to be colonized because they don't know what they're doing, or they're incapable, or they're this or that, or worse, right? And just really like holding to that is according to Fanon, like a claim. It's a response that is a psychoanalytical projection, like you're projecting, but you know you're haunted deep down
You
inside.
know it ain't right.
It's rattling around in
And
things.
you know it
so
ain't right.
it's,
Because you wouldn't want it done to you.
and so that, and it's a fear of payback. And so when we have this talk about reparations, or we have talk about, if you put, nobody wants black and power to be put together in a thing,
Yeah.
right? Because they're fair is that the payback for the treatment from when white had power or
Yeah.
whatever, right? So, so anyway, it was useful for her project, and then that the CEO response or the
Yeah.
makes me think of. I mean, I'm no psychiatrist. I take his word for it, but it makes sense if you think of just even our individual responses. You know, when you double down on something, you know that you're not really right, and
Yeah.
you feel messed up about it, but you're like you're.
Yeah.
How long could you do that until it breaks you down, and then you're like, I can't anymore, right?
I think what makes the people that stay in it the longest, they eventually develop emotional calluses because they have the pressure of bills and lack of opportunity dogging at their back. Because they put these prisons in these rural towns where there's really not a lot of resources and opportunities for people to have jobs. And like it's a big job creator. And so like once they get in, like, oh man, I got these benefits, I'm getting this paycheck, and like there's no other job opportunities within an hour, like I'm gonna stay here. I'm eating here. This is easy. I sit at the desk, press buttons, you know, and yell at people. And then they get to a point where like, man, this ain't what I really want. Because they'll see something, or they'll experience something that just shows them the reality of like, oh, I'll have to do this one day. I don't know if I want to do that. Or they're in the middle of it like, man, I just did this to this person. I don't feel good about that.
Prisons being put where they're put, it's like kind of like the slaughterhouses, you know, they're always on the periphery of some kind of, you know, nobody wants to see how the sausage is being made,
Yeah.
right?
Well said.
But that is another angle
Yeah.
to look at, like where the thing, because like you said, they're thinking about people who, if that's the job, then yeah, they're gonna hold on to, they're gonna do what the job entails,
No,
right?
I need the money. It's either you or me, and I'm gonna choose me. That's basically their mentality.
Yeah.
Financial incentives,
Oh yeah, the financial, the benefits, the insurance, like the benefits that they give COs is crazy. Like it's just so good, and they get different tax breaks, and it's not hard work. It's not labor intensive. Like you basically man, that's why a lot of COs, forgive me saying, they just not healthy, because they can sit down and bark orders and not really get involved until it's time to get active because they have a restraint or a staff assault. But it's not a healthy environment, mentally or physically. It's not. I know somebody got another question. Anybody? A thought, a lasting thought. What you got?
I guess I have a thought. So for my overall project, the U.S.'s Constitution is something I've been debating on for like years for now, as far as like where we are, and just a lot of people say that we have made progress in America, which we have made progress, but it's like all of our issues are still from our root issue, which is honestly.
I got it.
Say it again.
With,
Talking about the Constitution. I love the Constitution. I studied it. Yeah, I love studying the Constitution.
I think the Constitution needs to be written.
It does.
It was written by a bunch of white men, and people were like, "Oh, like we can amend it, we can do that," but there have been so many amendments made. Still, the lasting effects are still there. Like amendments, it frees slavery, but then it also was like, yeah, but if you become a prisoner, you're a slave, and it's kind of like knowing that after that, and then the black people who went to the military out of the country, those were the ones that they were aiming for because they knew more. They knew more now, and again, they don't want black people to have power. They fear that. So it's just kind of like, I do believe that it needs to just be rewritten, overall change the power structure, everything, because this has allowed too much to happen. It still continues to allow so much to happen to this day. Like even with Donald Trump and all of the stuff he's trying to pass, like he says that he's doing it because America is equal and it should be that way either way, but it's like with you removing this stuff, this is just proving that America to this day is still not equal. Like, what do you mean you're trying to ban certain words in America, even though we're supposed to have freedom of speech? But then it's also kind of like, if we get into war, then you don't have that freedom of speech anymore. Like, there's always so many loopholes, and people just like amend this, amend that, but we still have those loopholes. These were still based on certain ideas that are still sticking to this day, no matter how much you want to say that it doesn't exist.
So how many black people are in those rooms that helped draft those amendments?
None.
There it goes. So how do you get in the room? I don't know her name, but I forgot her name. There's a story of this black woman who basically played dumb like an old housemaid. And she was in the Confederate house where the leaders are, taking like notes of their strategies and their plans and their policies and all that, but pretended to be just a cleaner and acting like she couldn't read. And she gave that to the Union Army, to the other side, and basically took them down, gave all their intelligence over there. The only way that we're going to be able to change things is to get in position. So that means in some of these positions, some people, man, you're going to take some abuse. You're going to take some name calling. You're going to have to go through a gauntlet. You're going to have to perform sometimes 2 or 3 times better than everybody else in those positions. And you have to become invaluable. A lot of people say, hey, man, I'm going to chase this bag. No, don't chase the bag. Chase value. Find ways to create value. Make yourself indispensable. Because right now, a lot of the people that are in power, their kids are wrestling with the trauma of what's going on. They chasing methamphetamine, all these other different, don't want to go to school, cussing their mom and daddy out, drunk all the time. I ain't talking about the ones, the family members, the white people that are doing it right and doing the right thing, because they're out there. Like, we would not be free if it wasn't for white people, like John Brown. Anybody done research on John Brown? That's the reality of it. There's 2 types of people. There's the Willie Lynch type white person, and there's the John Brown type white person. Like, no, they'll lose their life to say, because this ain't right. These people are human, they matter, and they have a life. So, like, we have to get in position. Like, find ways, man, scrape, knock, look, every opportunity that you can, get in position to try to get in these positions, to learn all you can, get in power. It ain't gonna do you no good sitting complaining about the problem if you ain't trying to get in position. You know what I'm saying? And yeah, it's gonna be hard. Yes, it's gonna be hard, it's gonna be difficult. But let me give you this as a bit of encouragement. Black people were stolen from Africa because of trade. Yes, some of them was, Africans did sell slaves into slavery. But we were taken from our native land, our ancestors, we were told not to speak our native tongue, told we couldn't read the tongue of the people that took us. And we had to live like that for hundreds of years. So explain to me, how did we get from there to where we are right now? Man, tenacity. We got in position. We worked hard. We kept working. Like, where we are right now, how do we go from not knowing our native tongue, not being able to learn our native tongue, or the tongue of the people that took us, to putting people on the moon? That was a black woman that did that, wrote them Hidden Figures. Anybody seen that movie? Like, this is child's play right now, where we at right now, all the stuff that they doing. And I'll be honest with you, we need them to come out there and say all this crazy stuff right now so we can see it. No, be bold, tell us who you are, because what has happened, like, this stuff is gone under the ground, and we haven't seen it. You got people smiling in our face like, hey, how you doing? What's going on? You our friend. But we couldn't see what was really going on. Now people are bold about their beliefs and their ideals. And like, oh, we really got to have a conversation about it.
All the things that are happening, like with, you're talking about Trump, and so this blitz that we're having, or even we're having conversations about, we're a private school, so DEI, we can say those words, but it's still impacting. It feels different than the first time around.
Yeah.
Because we can't, when we're providing sanctuary for undocumented students, if we say those words and we say the things, they can come and it's more bold and more organized. They can come and they can raid, right? So then we're not. So now we have to change strategies because we're actually not protecting the students that we want to protect. So even though we have the right to say, do we say the words inclusive? Do we say the words equity, right? What's the strategy? But the fact that it is so blatant, I do think you're right. It is an opportunity where people, once we get past being stunned about it, you can see what the moves are. The move there, it's happening. It's happening in front of it. Like, it's
We
happening
need it.
out loud. It's happening, what, obviously.
In our
right?
in broad daylight. These people are committing robberies, heinous racial robberies, in broad daylight in our face. The world, they so bold. You got Elon Musk come on Zig High on broad TV. It's everywhere. Like, oh, you gonna be that bold? Oh, thank you. All of us should be saying thank you for allowing this to happen, because now we can address it and we can pinpoint it and talk about this conversation, because I firmly believe people that have these racial tendencies, they got some serious mental health issues.
And the world is reacting. I mean, people are reacting. You see the leaders and stuff. They're you know, they can see that it's calibrated. It's making America look, or it's exposing America for what we've been.
Yeah.
right. But
It's coming out now.
Where you're having allies saying, okay, we're going to make sure that we are sufficient, that we don't have to rely on the United States because crazy town is happening over there, and they're not gonna have our back, right? But you can see that you can see there's always gonna be loopholes. So you have to change the culture, and so getting into position will help with that. But then this other conversation of it's happening in a bold way, then it can also be tackled or outed in a bold way.
We can see the
right?
problem. If you can see it, you can fix it. The worst enemy to fight is the enemy that you cannot see. That is the worst enemy to fight, I promise you. Like, a lot of these people, man, they would say, you know, after they got convicted, like, man, I hate this judge, blah, blah, blah. Why you hate the judge? Like, the judge just sentenced you. Like, he didn't even know your name until you walked in front of his courtroom. Well, I hate the prosecutor. Prosecutor wouldn't know you if it wasn't for the police. Well, I hate the police. Well, which police officer do you hate?
Yeah.
Like, why are you here? You know, how did you get here? What happened? And in my situation, they hid evidence. So the enemy, I still don't know who hid it. But that's the person who did all that havoc. They hid that evidence. They knew it was there and they hid it until we found it years later. Like, that's the enemy. So when we see people that's bold, like, I'll be honest with you, that's stupid. They run around talking all this yin-yang about white superiority and all this. Oh, man, they tripping. They giving us everything we need. Every ammunition. Like, we did we did far worse, you know, far more in the past because of the racism that was out there. People sticking dogs on you when people started marching across the bridges. Dogs getting sick on the world saw it. The world is seeing it right now. And we got so many police shooting people, unarmed black men. You know, people didn't believe it. You know why they didn't believe it? Because they didn't have evidence of it. Now they got evidence. Everybody got phones. Everybody taking pictures and stuff that was on, like, oh, that really did happen. Oh, they really are racist over there in America. They're pretending, they're faking. You know, a lot of Hispanics that voted for Donald Trump, now they regret it because their ancestors and everybody else is getting crying in their graves because their families get snatched. But they voted in mass numbers for this man because of some tricks. We're all seeing it right now. So don't be discouraged right now. Be encouraged, because if you can see your enemy, you can fight your enemy.
What would you like to see for Friday in terms of where the conversation is going?
Any questions? Yeah. Any questions that you might got? Any thoughts? Any idea?
And it goes both ways too. Like, if there's something where you're like, well, you can pick their brains, right?
I got a question right now. You asked me about El Salvador's prison system over there they got going on. What are your thoughts about it? Do you know somebody over there?
No, I'm not Salvadorian, but I've worked in an immigration office, and so I feel like I definitely don't support the mass holding. I don't think that upon more reflection, I don't think that is the right way, because it's really just reducing the population so crime can't occur. I mean, like, the reason that the crime rates went down is probably because there's so much population in there, and so I don't know. I don't agree with that, but I think, I have seen some terrible, terrible actions from, immigrants, not saying anything on, like, because they're here, but I guess, like, not specifically from El Salvador, but in general, I've seen some terrible actions that have been brought here to the United States, or that have been committed there, and that's the reason they're here.
Yes.
So I do definitely think that they deserve to be somewhere, and they deserve to have, their president deserves to have a hard stance on those kinds of things, because they're awful human beings. Not all immigrants, but I mean, I've actually read cases, and I've had to, unfortunately, you know, they're paying you, so you've got to represent them, but it's really hard, because how can you represent someone that's, I don't know, a monster?
Yeah.
So I have like both sides. Like I feel empathy, of course, for their situation, but then I also read actual cases and see terrible people doing terrible things, and people deserve to be somewhere. I don't know where, but they deserve to be somewhere.
Yes. Yeah.
So,
Okay.
yeah.
I just wanted that because you know, for you to ask that, you've been wrestling with that.
Yeah, because I don't believe that, I certainly don't believe our criminals, our prisoners should to go over there. No, I don't think that should happen, but I don't even know if I really agree with the monsters going over there. I mean, I don't even know, like, I don't know where they should go, but
Remember,
it's just
so
hard.
we wanted to start this class thinking about that. So, what's the point of prison, or what should be the point of prison? So, if we have people who are committing heinous crimes that maybe they can't be rehabilitated for whatever reason, or they have no wish, no desire, that they're, like you said, maybe there needs to be a place for some people. But then you'll have these other facets where some people are you can get them. You can help them. The first thing would be if there would be already provisions, there would be support, and there'd be access, and there'd be opportunity, and so on, so people don't get themselves in situations or involved in criminal activity. But then if you were to make a mistake, or you're not irredeemable. Not everybody is irredeemable, right? So then that they would have programs to, there's other ways rather than warehousing. Like that's not the whole solution, right?
Yeah,
There
it's
is a-
just they don't have the funds to. Well, actually, they
Whenever
do.
we
They do have the
whenever we
funds.
say there's
but
not enough money for something,
they-
you have to look at where are we spending the money? What's the
Yeah,
priorities?
yeah,
right?
But it's just not the same as a country like the U.S. Like the U.S. absolutely has. They do have not the same amount, but they don't have. I don't know. Such a microscope on them. Like U.S. has more of a microscope
Yes.
on them to make that change. El Salvador doesn't. Guatemala doesn't. You know. So.
El Salvador is an American. They are, you know, and let me throw this out there. This is important for y'all to research this. Crime is a weapon. Like, crime is allowed to happen in certain. Crime is a weapon to basically, you can create it by taking away opportunities. Like you never know what a person is capable of until they're put in a situation where they have lack of opportunities. And like if you look at gentrification, if you guys ever studied that, like crime will be allowed to happen and there will be an over policing in that area, so they can go in there and basically clean it out and then buy it up and then rinse it and clean it up into a whole area. It happens in other countries. You take away jobs, different opportunities. They call it destabilizing countries. Like, if you really want to do some research, figure out like how did El Salvador get to this way? Who benefited from it being this way? Like, are there minerals or something happening over there? Like they're getting all this money from these prisons. They feel like they win. Oh, I got all this money now. We're getting all these resources, and I'm helping people. Lo and behold, 10, 15, 20 years from now, they're going to start seeing effects of it. They need more fine tuning. They're just now learning about it. Otherwise, they can look at the Norwegian City Project and other different organizations that have done it different and have gotten scientific proven results. Like they're learning and they're gonna figure it out if they're really serious about it. You know, how did they get that? How did El Salvador get overrun by gangs? That's a question that needs to be asked.